Fantastic. So, hi again. My name is Archana Samtani Singhania, and I'm a business advisor at VBC. I wanted to start off this session by grounding myself and acknowledging the fact that I'm grateful to live, play, and work on the unceded territories of the Semyamu, Kwatsi, Kwantaloom, Musqueam, Slahavut, and Swasin First Nations, also known as Clayton. I do invite you to write in chat on whose traditional territories you are joining us from. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us a bit about you and maybe your business as well. And if there is any webinar that you would like us to host in the future, please mention that in the chat as well. A little bit about us. So VBC helps support you on your small business journey. Whether you are starting or you are ready to take things to the next level, we offer flexible financing, which is access to capital, and we help you get to achieving whichever goal you want to achieve. Unlike traditional lenders, we take a holistic approach, looking at the viability of your business. This means we're able to provide loans at a diverse, for a diverse range of women-owned businesses. We don't stop at financing. We offer wraparound services like including training, mentorship, personalized business advising, for essential business skills or even tailored advice. We help to ask the right questions and we try connecting you with the right resources. We have a fantastic mentoring program. It's a great way to connect with a supportive network of entrepreneurs and experts from across BC who can inspire and guide you. So I'd invite you to learn more about VBC by logging onto our website, we-bc.ca, to explore more about our services as well as sign in for our e-newsletter. So today, it's going to be a great session for all the folks who are considering expanding their business beyond BC. Exporting offers great opportunity, but it also comes with its unique set of challenges. So today's fireside chat is with Mara Mennicken. She is the owner of the GOOD Chocolatier, who will share her real world journey to exporting to a new country. I have been lucky to meet Mara many times in the past, this 2023 and 2024, and I've had some fantastic conversations with her. Mara is a social entrepreneur who loves finding solutions for real life social and environmental issues. She comes from Germany 10 years ago and is stirring up something delectable and some fantastic creations in BC. She's on a mission to prove that chocolate can be indulgent, highly ethical, and incredibly good for you. Who would argue that point? So in this session, we will chat with Mara about her experiences in entering a new market and why did she decide to go through all that trouble. So Mara, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for having me, Archana and BBC. There's a fantastic, I'm looking forward to this chat. And yeah, why going through all this trouble? We're going to hopefully answer these questions.
Right, so let's get started with all the fun stuff, which is when I have a thought of starting something new, I get lost with these chaotic plans and ideas in my head. So, so many questions, so many things flying around. So maybe can you share with us what was the very first step you took when you decided to export? How did you get that ball rolling?
Hmm. So even that is a bit of a journey because it started some time ago, and I wouldn't say even at this point now that I'm, super big in export. It just like takes a very long time. Um, but I think generally I'm a person, I have an idea, I get super excited, I take action with something, and I'm like, yes, I can do it. I'm gonna deal with it when it comes. And so this is a bit what happened in October 2023. I think that's maybe around the time I also was connected to BBC. I might have met you for the first time. I saw this email coming up with the BC Food and Export Program to send people, business owners from BC to Expo West. And I had already kind of heard from a lot of people, hey, for food business in BC, just going down to Washington, Oregon makes a lot of sense. I've heard from other people, they went all the way to Ontario, and it's like, what should I approach first? So that was really the question, what makes most sense for me at this point. So I applied like within 5 minutes of receiving this email, and that was kind of end of the year, right? October, November. Then I heard back in November, and I got in, and I was like, oh my God, like I actually got this spot. And you have to imagine, like Expo West, if you've heard of it, like it's a massive, massive trade show, like way bigger than CHFA, 10 times as big. And it's also 10 times as expensive. If you go by yourself, it's easy $15,000 to $20,000. And like BC provides an opportunity to really have your own booth for $500. So I was like, oh my God, this is exactly, how I wanted to start and try out. But it's also November, December, January is also a time for chocolate that is obviously the most busy. And at that time, like I already planned all the other shows for the next year, right? Like I made a plan for anything that's happened definitely in the next half year. So it was kind of, just squeezed in between. And now thinking about it too, like you cannot squeeze as with between something. It's something you really seriously have to plan for. So I think still my excitement was super, super high. And December was all the time where like all the gatherings are, even there was, right, the BC Food and Beverage event and so on and so forth. And I shared with some like consultants, with some friends and mentors, like I'm going to Expo West. I got accepted, so excited. And then kind of the questions came from people, yeah, oh wow, like you have this in place, that in place, through all these words around me I've never even known and heard about and thought of. And so that's when I started to take a step back and really hear and listen to stories, also what potentially hasn't gone really right, in some people's approach, and losing product or like a whole pallet at the border, and really actually losing a lot of money and time just because people hadn't been prepared. And I mean, it happens all the time. And so that was really for me a point, is like, well, I'm not one of those business that I can just like test the market, have, a lot of money to just go for it. I really have to consider things. And with a busy chocolate season, also having that in mind, I emailed them in December, saying like, hey, I think now even with FDA, with printing the packaging, with all of the 4 months, 3 months, 4 months is just simply not possible. I was considering it. I had already started designing my, US label requirements. I did the switch and I had my, labels designed, but even the printing, pretty much, I had zero time for anything not working out. And so let's say if everything would have even worked out, like being proper prepared is still definitely very different than having the basics in place, just the bare minimum to actually make it across the border. So that's kind of how I would have approached it, because there was simply no time. So I decided that I'm gonna wait, and I told them in December right away. It's like, hey, I want to give this spot to somebody who's more ready. I'm afraid that 2 weeks beforehand I might not have things in place, and then nobody can take the spot, and it's gonna be right, like it's such a lost opportunity for somebody else. So that was kind of, the first excitement, and then like thinking of it more clearly, and asking a lot of people, asking around. And then luckily I met somebody, I think in January, who has taken the TAP program, and with the Vancouver Board of Trade, and obviously VBC is involved. And that's what I got on, like very first thing right away. I applied for that. And I think in February, I already knew kind of that I got a spot. I was like, okay, perfect. The planning season for chocolate, and I also, that's something I have to consider, seasonality of my product, and when is my strategic phase of planning, putting things in place, and where I can actually do research and all of that. What is part of being starting to export, having even time for that. And like winter time simply is just like selling, and completely the opposite. So I applied for the TAP program, I got in, and that's kind of where I think I approaches then from a little bit more of a softer landing perspective, and took the time to even, open the book and say like, hey, I know nothing. Like, let's really see if the place I had imagined even made sense, right? Does Expo West make sense? I just had an idea and applied, but I hadn't done really all considered all the other things and options even for me before making that decision. And so then I took the TAP program last year, and I guess it was June. And part of that program is writing an export plan. And of course, for an export plan is you do the research, all things considered. We met so many professionals and experts in the areas of their expertise, from payment management, insurance things, tax perspectives, and just giving me so much more confidence. I think what was previously fear was then confidence, as like, oh yeah, it is doable. And yes, I'm a small company, but as long as I am aware of these things and I know who to ask when things happen, that I just felt like much better prepared to go for it. So we are now selling on fairs. So I have around 10 locations in the US at this point. And yeah, we have our first show now this year, April, a year later, but I really don't regret anything. I feel like this was the right decision for us at that stage. Yeah.
So I'm glad this sounds amazing, but I'm glad you highlighted the importance that networking has played in your journey. Because right from the
Mm,
beginning, even meeting BBC, finding out about TAP, I think came in through your networking aspect. So
mm,
is there, um, are there any key resources or networks like women entrepreneur groups or export associations that you benefited from? Tell us a bit more about TAP. Tell us a
mhm,
bit more about the associations and organizations you reached out to and how they helped you.
mhm. Um, So really it starts with, a bit of, I guess, the mentors, consultants, people I met over the years, younger, older, and like actually been in the industry for some time, and asking them. But I feel like sometimes also these just having opportunities for places to meet new people, like BC Food and Beverage Association, right, is like a massive help. And we won the product of the year gold in that October 2023. So then people also wanted to talk to us. It was very useful. I just couldn't come with anything, oh yeah, we're planning to export. And then so that definitely helped us as well. There's obviously the other events they host, Food Pro, where I believe I met you, and I met Melanie Rupp, and it was the first time I was like, oh, WBC, it's like there. And I haven't really tapped into that enough. um, and then through the TAP program, I can say like there's so much more I had no idea about. Like, for example, trade commissioners, right? Like play such a big role in exporting. And I had never even considered what role BC plays in wanting to bring BC products into the international market, right? It's like it's one of their interests as well. And you're so in your own like little business bubble that you don't think about like the outside, and maybe there's government also that is there to support, and these trade commissioners over now the time, like they're just so resourceful and like there to send me information and make sure really, I receive everything I need, and that their programs offered and sent to me that are fitting my path right now. And so that's actually how I'm also now going on the NEBS trade mission to Seattle. That was through the trade commissioner who just emailed us. Obviously WBC, and there might be some other, that I had forgotten, but what also I think the TAP program was so cool, like it kind of brought it all together, and you didn't have to um, look for all these individuals everywhere because they were already in the network of the TAP program. Like at least when it comes to export, that was so valuable, to have at least one contact person of each of the organizations where I can really reach out, and know there's somebody who has potentially even read my export plan, right? Like people who were involved there, like we wrote export plans with like 30 pages, and we met with exports that actually skimmed over our export plan. Like I was so impressed, and gave us like really targeted information of where they think gaps are and what they think about what else we could need and would be helpful to us. Yeah, I mean, lots of stuff out there, especially in BC. Now I'm like, right, I'm always surprised. I knew 2 years ago there's a lot, and then I think every year, like I'm just very amazed how great the network is if you really go seek it out. Yeah, definitely.
I'm so glad you brought up that aspect of the resources that are available to start exporting or even while you are planning to export. So, for all the folks in
Mm-hmm.
the room, if you're a little lost, reach out to VBC and we will be able to help you connect or direct you to the right resource that can help you in your export journey. So
Mm-hmm.
Mara, you mentioned you're going to the States now for another big show or multiple shows. Is there anything specific that you are doing to plan or prep for this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that the
Um,
first time lacked a little bit extra prep. What are you doing different now?
mm-hmm. Um, So I'm definitely more careful with things and I start things earlier. And right, I think that is especially if you have limited resources or time, human resources, even. I think that is something that is always useful. And just to like let everyone know, the show I'm going to now, it's not a big trade show. It's actually a consumer show where it has become so big and it's been going on for 20 years that actually a lot of buyers from the supermarket also attend. So it's kind of like a bit of a hybrid, but not that it's specifically a trade show. What I like about it now, it's actually not just the money lost. I'm able to sell my product there and see how that would even work, how the market reacts, right? Like I would say there's a benefit in both trade shows and consumer shows, but now actually getting that direct feedback for people in a completely different marketplace is very, very useful to me. And also the show was actually completely paid for, and that is only because we're a social enterprise and we hire people with disabilities. And I had never imagined that could happen in a like international show, right? So the organizer just decided that this year's theme should be how do we get more people with disabilities in the workforce. And it just happened that chocolate and coffee was the show he had. So he has like, let's try to hire people and bring all the volunteers with Down syndrome and like on the spectrum, and like really put them to work and show this is a good thing in that industry, and it's very possible. And I think when I chatted with him last year, I already told him, like, and I always tell about that's an aspect of our company because it is a big aspect. Majority of our workforce is actually on the spectrum. And that has just opened up, so many little chapters and opportunities so that he said, like, I'm going to just 100%, pay for your booth, your flight, your shipping, your everything. And then and I can be on a panel, I can sell my product there. And I feel like that's also one thing about the export journey that, I, as a small manufacturer, I kind of just have to take opportunities. I'm not saying big companies shouldn't take opportunities, but I had all this plan, my export plan, Pacific Northwest. Those are these, 3 states, and this is where I'm going, and this is how I'm going to do it. And then this thing comes up. But to be honest, like that's just an opportunity you can't say no to. I'm just going to test a different market and, deviate slightly from my plan. But this is definitely going to be my people in terms of, coffee, chocolate, and then hiring people with disabilities. I think generally I'm obviously just super stoked because that's definitely a topic that I often talk about, and that's the reason I started my business. And right, it's such a big part of who we are and what we do, besides just making really, really tasty chocolate. So that I'm really looking forward to it. But there are definitely steps of even knowing how people do business in the US, right? And how it might be different. How it is to have a traveling show, to really, send your stuff there and like make sure it arrives. And there I would really suggest everyone to even do a traveling show within Canada. And even before the last year Expo West, I got that yes. I had never, like, all my shows were in Vancouver, and I had never actually, flown somewhere else to have a show there. And last September was our first time CHFA East. And there were so many little things I realized, oh, I'm so thankful. Like I did this before going to the States, because there are a lot of, commonalities. Like if you even like having everything, you need to start much earlier, right? I used to go Vancouver Convention Center. My office warehouse is like not even 10 minutes away. I stock up, I go there. Like it just like could not be more convenient, anything in Vancouver. And then realizing what is all part of it, how your day is structured. You need to pick up, you need to rent a new hall, you have to have everything organized way up front. At least now I think the logistics of that don't scare me as much anymore, because we've done that, although it was like, in Canada. But shipping things over is always, a fear. You're just like, okay, 3 weeks beforehand, you're like, okay, go product in my booth and everything, and then just like hoping it arrives at your booth actually on the event day is like always a magical moment. I think it never gets old. But that's definitely one thing that is a little bit scary, to just like send stuff really far away, making sure it arrives. But what I said about like how they do business there, and what we learned, also what I learned from others, is just massive in the US. Decisions are being made much more quicker. It's more business oriented. Like how do they even do business compared to like the West Coast here in BC? And it's actually, I think it's more unique how we do business, that it's sometimes more casual than business oriented. And right, over the last like 6, 7 years, I got so used to that. But then even going to Ontario, I think it's much more close to the US. How, people communicate, and they say like they reach out and they're interested, it means they want to do business with you. It's not like, okay, perhaps in like a year from now, let's check again. Like it's, so I think just being ready with everything. I need to know my prices inside out. The US prices. If somebody asks, hey, what's your Canadian prices? How do you justify? I need to know like how did they come up with this, and why does it make sense? And that is a fair price, even in the US. And I think like with any show, what is the best, to just be as prepared as possible in terms of what is even your goal there, which distributors or which retailers you want to meet, finding them on LinkedIn, reaching out to them and having a list of, these are my 5 key goal retailers there. I want to meet them. I'm going to reach out to the organizer, and ask them, hey, are these going to be there? Like, these are fitting stores for me. So I don't feel like whatever comes towards me, I need to either take or say no. It's more like, hey, this is really my goal. If I hit 2 of these, 3 of these, I'm going to be very happy. And there I can already argue a product market fit. Like even last year in Ontario, what it is, like I send people there, it's like, check out this store, like Healthy Planet, take like a picture of the chocolate aisle. I want to have a good argument, like why I fit there in the shelf and what do I offer that others don't do right now currently. And even, checking a store out quickly in the morning to just really make sure like this is the right thing. And it impresses the retailers for them to like, oh, she doesn't even know anything about the store, but she knows like the chocolate aisle, like how do I fit in and everything. And that's all things like that are so much easier to do upfront, because the days of the trade show or consumer show, like they fly by, they're like such a whirlwind, like you don't barely present for a moment. And I think having that, my like sales booklet, my goals, and like, the right people to reach out to meet, I can watch out for these people. I can even ask somebody else who shows up, hey, is this and this person there? Have you seen them? And so that is definitely something how I can stay sane like during the time and not just, feel like feel like so passive, right? Like that it's just either coming towards me and it's either the right things or not. It's really just taking a proactive approach and knowing what you want to get out of it. And I mean that's pretty much with any show. And then it's all the FDA regulations, printing and stuff. But I've been just really, really closely in communication with the organizers too, and asking them, what is really essential for this? Should I have all my prints ready? And asking them what would be a good fit, which is kind of a benefit for this show because I can ask these things. But yeah, pretty much, there's still, I got my insurance in place, things that just take very long, like the packaging, printing. I just like, you need to start months in advance. Yeah.
I, I noted that you mentioned that there were differences between West Coast Canada and America, but we will come back to that point. There are a couple of
Mm-hmm.
questions in the chat. One of them
Mm-hmm.
is, what is the TAP program? So the TAP program
Mm-hmm.
is the Trade Accelerator program that is conducted by the World Trade Center. We can send you the link to that program after this session, or you can, reach out to VBC, and we can then connect you with the TAP program. It's a fantastic program if you're thinking of exporting outside of
Mm-hmm.
BC. There are a couple questions for you, Mara. One, a couple of the folks here want to know the name of the show that you went to, the name of the trade show, I'm assuming, that you went.
Uh, so sorry, last year Expo West.
Expo West is one, and
Expo
what is
West,
the one that you are going to now?
that is the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Fest. So
Okay,
it's all just coffee and chocolate
chocolate.
and yeah.
Okay, so I hope Beth and Julia, I hope you got your answers. Um, So Beth has another question. How many years did it take for you to get everything done to export? And how long
Mm.
did it take for the expenses involved to do all this, including all the trade shows, cost, shipping, booth fees, etc., to pay off?
Hmm.
When you traveled to these trade shows, did you get accounts right away?
Hmm.
By
Well,
accounts,
this
I
is really
think
asking. Okay, this is really asking about like, I mean, last year I didn't attend the US shows, right? For me, it's still coming up, but even outside the province, let's say the CHFA East and everything, how many years take? You know what? Like, so I did the first research and I was like, hell, I'm doing that like October 2023. And then there's a lot of soft approaches that I, didn't necessarily talk about now but in the very beginning, somebody told me it's like, oh, if you're ready, I have, a very small broker in Washington that I think would be a good fit for you. Let me know when you're ready. And so throughout the TAP program, I was like, I really also considered, being tied to a broker distributor right away. And I was like, I actually have to test the market first myself. I don't know yet, 100% that I don't want to give somebody a big cut if it's like just this very, very difficult push. So I can do as much research as I want. And it was really, I mean, I chose Pacific Northwest because my chocolates have all the Pacific Northwest imagery and like the market is like in terms of craft chocolate, they're very, very educated. There's one of the best chocolate festivals in Seattle. And so I know I've attended like the chocolate festival many times enough that I know the market is there. And yet I said, hey, I actually think, there are platforms, there are other ways to try it. And I already knew, I think somebody approached me at a trade show and told me about Fair Marketplace. It's actually one that I saw in the agenda for the trade mission in a couple of weeks that somebody's going to speak about it. I didn't know, that it's a big deal, but so far it's been very, very helpful. It's so it's an online marketplace, let's say, just like Amazon, but obviously not Amazon, and it's really for a lot of artisan brands to find small brick and mortar stores all around the world that match the values that you have. And I mean, that is invaluable, right? Like for them to do the research and actually know that there is your customer and present your online storefront shop like to them. And that's how I got my first customers. And I can say that what it has been amazing so far is even getting shipping, right? Commercial invoice, some of the logistics figured out. And I mean, there's a threshold on chocolate for until $800 US. If my orders are smaller, I can ship it with any shipper. I just need to have like yeah, all my papers in place, but I don't need to pay duties and tariffs or anything under $800. I could test my pricing. I've already changed my pricing twice since. If I had gone with a broker right away, oh my God, like you can't really just change your prices that quickly, right? But I realized, hey, I need to have a bigger buffer, for whatever random miscellaneous costs. My insurance got more expensive. Like these are all things as you go, you're like, oh damn, like it actually, adds up. Marketing costs gonna be more. So for me, it was ideal because there's a lot of people, there's stores that are just have similar values. And now I have a store in Alaska and all the way in New Hampshire and wherever, just people who resonate with what my brand does. And so that I think saved me a lot of money or like help me to be able to test things out without being there and thinking like, oh, I can't reverse this and now my prices are stuck and I'm not making money here. Right, so that's definitely one thing that I made it much softer, and it didn't take me long to start. I think it just was about finding the right ways that it matches right now your resource level and your other plans as well. So one thing, it is a bit relevant, I think, what comes in between here. I always thought my product is going to sell much better Pacific Northwest in the US than in Ontario. That was an assumption I made because I designed the product with the Pacific Northwest in mind. And I have a lot of local ingredients from here, right? Like I have like ocean and all of that. I went to Ontario and people absolutely loved it. I have accounts there now. It was just like such an easy flow. And I was like, to be honest, now I know Ontario works. I'm not going to put Ontario on hold if I have already leads there and now approach the Pacific Northwest just because. So then last year, I decided I'm going to focus on Ontario first, right? I'm going to get my distributors there in place and I'm going to move now the really export journey to 2025, which, was just something that happened, but it was just an assumption I had and it turned out different. So that's why things got a little bit delayed. But I mean, I still started in 1.5 years, and have my few stores there. So um, with packaging, I'm going to do smaller runs, I think 2,000 each, just to have something for definitely the show and a little bit beyond, and make sure that as long as I have everything designed and the same package, I can just go print another run. But to have these things at least done once to know that I'm ready. And again, people want to make decisions quickly in the US. I don't want to say, oh yeah, oops, oh no, I don't have my labels yet. And then obviously I'm going to lose all my opportunities that I even went there in the first place for. Um, and pricing, I mean, Achana, we talked about it before. Like when I spoke to other people who were thinking about the US and started the exporters, like, oh, you got to make sure you have 1 million, $1 million aside to even like think about export. It's going to be so expensive. Everything costs more money. And it didn't stop me. I just said, of course, I don't have $1 million. It's like a small chocolate company. But I just found ways that make it cheaper and a little bit, slower and softer probably. But it didn't stop me because I wanted to try it out. And I feel like if there's a product market fit, I cannot afford to push my product into a market where it doesn't fit, right?
Absolutely.
It's going to be a lot of waste of resources. I'm not going to do it. Like I do
Expensivistic.
not. very expensive. So what I that's why the fair marketplace was really, I wanted to put it out there and see where even people, grab it and find it. Maybe it's not exactly Washington and Oregon where I always assumed it is. And really like having an open mind and say like, yes, that's the plan. I research it and know it can work, but even let the market decide as well. And so I found I needed to test the marketplace first to say like, hey, there's a fit, and then I'm going to look for a broker. I'm going to look for a distributor. Then I'm going to start investing resources there. But for now, I don't really, I'm making money on my stores that, sell it in the US. I'm not spending anything. The marketplace, like online marketplace, takes 15% for all the marketing, but I mean, that's cheaper than a distributor and a retailer than would do. So far, that hasn't cost me a lot of money. A lot of the things, were just like, hey, I waited until there's the right time and I chose things that I could afford. Yeah, but it didn't stop me from starting. So I hope that's answering the question.
That is a clever way to start exporting. So there are a couple more questions in the chat. Tap does look for annual sales, but their annual sale threshold continues to change for every cohort. So you might want to check back in with them. Um, and VBC business advisors can help you get started with your export journey as well. And we can also refer you to other resources. So really do take advantage of the complimentary business advising that VBC provides. Um, TAP does help service-based businesses export as well. So if you are a service-based business, do reach out to them or reach out to us and we can maybe make referrals to them as well. You will benefit immensely from that program. So there's one
And if I
interest.
can,
Sure.
sorry, that was for the TAP program, right? I think one thing to be aware of, obviously is like food business, service business, and everything. And the TAP program is really also a very large variety and broad kind of business, but then they connect you, throughout the program with people that are like the resources that are specifically for you, your niche. So let's say now the trade mission I'm going on, it's for food businesses wanting to export to the Pacific Northwest. Like it's 100% fit, right, for me, that what I wanted to do. And I got the resource through TAP, which was very broad. But yeah, it starts very broad. In the beginning, I was like, oh, there's only two food businesses, but it really didn't matter. Absolutely not. Like it was just like so much helpful things in there that, guided me in the right direction.
So there's one interesting question here. Annie asks, how did you learn about FDA and labeling? And which company did you use?
So the labeling, I had just a food consultant, a little bit of a one-stop shop. Like food consultant helped me with my third-party audits, and also with some of my labeling requirements. And honestly, it's I get as much information myself. Going to Bellevue or going to Bellingham and even checking out the chocolate eye and see what's there, always helpful, right? To just really see like how it looks in practice. And then I designed it, which there was not too many changes, to be honest. Like there's like, oh, made with ingredients made in Canada, or like the by BC is not going to be important then. So just being aware of these certain like smaller changes. I was just so happy to get rid of the French and have so much room on my mini chocolate bar. It's like, wow, like I can actually present what I wanted to present on the packaging. And I just get it reviewed from a professional. So it's like just like a label consultant that deals with both Canadian and US, and you send it in, you maybe pay, $200 for like really the review. There is some that I found in the web that wanted like $800 to compare it, and then I was like, I don't think it's done. I knew it's done. I knew I hit all the marks, that they needed, and so for me $800 was a little bit too much. So I started searching a bit more, Yeah, I'm also in a Facebook group it's retail ready. It's a course I took like I think very beginning, and it's just actually California based, all food businesses. And I just ask question, hey, I have these labels. Does anyone have, like a good consultant? So that's definitely just asking for like shopping around before, committing for $1,000 or so to compare the labels. So but honestly, it was not too complicated. I find the guidelines were like easy to understand once you understand the Canadian ones. And, like for me, I use coconut sugar, and knowing that coconut is an allergen in the US, but not an allergen in Canada is like, what? First of all, like how? But then it's just, yeah, okay, so there's an allergen. Okay, I changed it slightly, right? It wasn't a big deal, not a major difference. Yeah.
So there's another interesting question that Alice
Hmm.
asked. She says she loves your chocolates. Plus one to
I know
that.
her. Hi, Alice. I love her chocolates.
So, so she is applying for with the FDA to be approved for D2C sales. And
Hmm.
she asks if you can provide guidance on how to find a US agent because they require that in the application.
Hmm. So I saw that and I was like, well, why would I use, you need a US agent, like in terms of also for my fair sales, right? I was like, I don't actually like they don't ask me for an agent, but then for the FDA, you actually do need one. I called the FDA. Very responsive, most responsive of any government call I've ever made, like literally pick up in 5 minutes. And they just told me, oh, no, you don't really need a US agent. Just have somebody who lives in the US, that you can use. Obviously there's the highly professional way and there's the startup way. I was very surprised that she actually suggested me to go to the least professional route, because there's obviously US agent services, right? Like there's that I found, it was like $200 a year. You pay them, but they're going to stay your US agent, and they can deal with anything that goes wrong. um, I did end up going, the more private way to have somebody set up that I asked and was like, hey, can you, be my US agent just for this for these occasions? And but most of it's still like handled by me. If anything goes wrong, like I would get the call. It's really just because you need to register your facility, and you have to have a US address. So that is kind of the main deal. And either, you know somebody, which is very helpful, who is connected to your business. I mean, it's important you let them know if there's a shipment, right? Know something about your product. They just need to be able to pick up the phone, if anything is at the border, because they do not hold your product very long. It might be 4 days and they discard everything. So definitely communicate. But there are services for that as well that I found, which would have been my second approach, because that is just organization. I didn't find $200 per year a whole lot to actually have somebody, like an agency who is very responsive and knows all the things inside out. And I might still go back to and using that. But after like having most of my fair shops, I do know a broker on the US side, and that will be coming with an US agent. So I'm kind of just waiting until I'm ready for that step. But yeah, it's more so about the address, and you can use somebody who as long as they know enough about your product. Yeah.
So there was a follow-up question, which I think you sort of covered. How did you do FDA approvals, and is there a website? So I know you
Yeah.
mentioned that you called the FDA, but initially,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
how did you start with getting your FDA approvals?
Um, there is a website, and it's not FDA.com. I have to find it. To be honest, I know I don't, but I'm pretty sure I just Googled FDA approval, like food businesses, and I found it where, yeah, you have to create an account, a login. It's gonna ask you everything about your DUNS code, right? You get a DUNS code, there's an HS code, like all of these things that it just to identify your product. Um, It sounds very, very scary in the beginning, just like, wow, if it doesn't get approved. But I actually have been importing my cacao from day one. Like this is literally when I just started, like the first week, I needed to import my cacao from the States, and I actually go do all the customs for myself, right? I just go commercial crossing and I do all of these forms. And I now kind of, I'm not as scared of it anymore because there's really just they need to identify your product. They need to have proof of invoices, where it's coming from, which country. And it's really just to make sure that they know what comes across the border. It's not so much to screw you over, which, sometimes you think this is exactly what they want. But it's if you, as long as you have all the information, about your product and all your vendors and everything, that's pretty much, it's just a traceability tool to make sure the thing you import is actually okay be in that country. So it's as a food product, chocolate is very low risk, and I know it's very different for cheese and and other dairy products and even vegetables and everything. But chocolate is fortunately a low risk product. And all my cacao comes from the States, or like my supplier is in the States. So a lot of that is it might have been helpful for me. But again, like oh cool, there somebody posted Alice posted the site. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, just to create an account, and once you have everything in place, it doesn't take very long. Yeah, but the US agent, US address is something you need.
So I love the questions that are coming in from the audience. Please feel free to ask any other questions that you have. But meanwhile, for all the folks here, Mara, most of them are wanting to start exporting. So is there that one piece of advice or that one golden nugget of inspiration that you would like to tell them?
hmm Inspiration. I think what you've heard through already now through my journey, like it was a lot like taking a step back and then looking at it from with new eyes, and really making sure the path that I wanted to take was the most uh not just convenient, or what was the right path for me. Um, I think one, knowing just that there's so many resources and it doesn't have to be right. Like BC wants you to export your product if you're located in BC, and I'm sure other provinces have the same. Um, to just know there is ways to access those resources. Put yourself out there again. What Archana said, like show up to these events, and even I'm still now, like I feel like I kind of know what I'm doing, although I'm like really, really early stage, but at least I have a plan that I, trying to follow. And it's always going to change anyways. But even now, when I meet somebody in export, I was like, hey, are you open for a chat? Can we chat half an hour? I never met this person. It's like now a bakery I was connected through. He's like, okay, sure. Like people want to help is one thing. People really want to help and share also their things that might have not gone really right, and make sure that you do it right, no matter how long they've known you, or it's just very supportive. I feel like that way in BC, especially among women. But so there's just a lot of resources for women, I feel. Um, and there was another thing I wanted to share. Like really, go your way. And I remember Archana, when I did write all my export plan, and we met with everyone, right? And I was so proud. I was like, I have my plan. Oh my God, I worked so much on it. I think I know what I'm doing, right? And I thought like it's kind of like I got it, like, this is like the end destination. And then you told me, I was like, okay, now you have a plan, right? Start thinking about implementing. Who's going to implement this? Who's going to run your business while you're doing all of these
Yes,
things, right?
I
Is it
remember
going to
that
be you?
conversation.
Like I was like, oh my God. Like I thought, yeah, I'm just, going to carve a little bit of time out here and do it. It's not something you just do on the side, and just being very aware how time consuming and resource consuming it can be, and making sure that your home base is not going to fall apart, right? This is really like, I find, so that again, with my Ontario phase, I was like, I felt that was much more intuitive, that was much more useful for me last year. And I did not want to let things go, on a local basis either, just to say like, now I want to go do this big thing and start exporting. And just always checking big with what those were your goals, and are they still relevant? Are those things, and do you have the resources to do that? Because after our talk, I really thought, I looked at the export plan. I was like, okay, now every section, like it's a great idea. It sounds very reasonable. Now really think of who's gonna do that, how much might that cost, and I mean, I can only go as fast as I have money, right? Like, so it will be a little bit slower for me, but I felt I'm actually much more a person who like just goes do things. I'm a risk taker, in my like person. I've always been that way. But with my business over the years, I think because it's a social enterprise, it has really taught me to slow things down and make things um, a little bit less risky, because I know I'm responsible for people who wouldn't otherwise have a job. And it gave me this like, a bit more added responsibility. Hey, it's not just about my business, and if I'm taking a big risk and lose a lot of money, if I have to fire somebody, that I gave an opportunity to, I would not be able to forgive myself, because that's actually my core mission. Like, I need to know that my core mission is taken care of, and I can go dream big and like still do the things. But it sometimes takes away, your big dreams and plans take away from what you're actually, your foundation of the business, and just being aware that your foundation is still the most important. And then, if you have extra resources, you can go and do these things.
That
But
is
yeah,
so
go.
lovely, Mara. Thank you for sharing that. I have 1,000 more questions, but there are a couple more in chat, and we are running out of time. So I'm going to sort of merge two. One is about your pricing strategy. How did you work your US pricing versus your Canadian pricing? And how do you look at the potential new Trump tariffs from USA, if I may call them that?
Mm-hmm. Um, Multiple things. So one, I always have my big Excel with like my unit costing. It's pretty much I have constantly open, because things change. What I had to deal with in chocolate, and people who are in chocolate can resonate with, our like raw ingredient costs have tripled in the last year, and that has also thrown me back. Pretty much all my extra resources I thought I can use for export are now just going to buy the same amount of cacao, but for like triple the price. Um, and so it has been a year of a lot of adjusting and looking at my prices so intensely anyways, that I felt converting it to US dollars wasn't really a hard task, because right, I had to just like try to make my margins work in a way that I could still be able to exist even in BC. But I took the same at exact like costing what it was in Canada at first, and I translated that obviously in US dollars and thought about the extra things that come up. And to be very fair, like, you just sometimes do not know what those are going to be. So I started with like kind of setting it quite low on fair, just to see like, hey, I want to get a bit of momentum. Then I got some momentum. I reworked my price, and it's like, hey, what are the things that I didn't consider, like higher insurance, new printing, and is this going to be more expensive if I do smaller runs? Miscellaneous costs. I always have a bit of either inflation buffer or a miscellaneous buffer, right? Adding an extra 5 to 10% in BC, and in Canada, it's a 5%, but for the US, I added 10% because I know there's higher marketing costs that I do not carry right now, but they are coming down the line, and I do not want to change my prices once I'm in the first retailer, at least not for the first year, right? Like, goal is to just like try to not change it right away. So like a bigger, like, miscellaneous buffer to my prices. Shipping, I needed to buy new boxes that I previously wasn't shipping out my product in. Added that, maybe potentially some shipping costs. It's really just looking at my cost and see what additional there would be. And I could argue like shipping to the US is a little bit cheaper, but in Canada, I also get the deals with my distributors, at least so far, that they carry my shipping. With a distributor in the US, I can't say that this is the norm yet. I don't know that I rather calculate it, for just having that extra, what, even it's 20, 25 cents per unit, right? It adds up. Um, and then I guess with the currency exchange is not like a massive deal right now, but definitely knowing what it would be in translation. So far I've really added the things that I'm aware of, and like a little bit of that random, buffer that I can even argue this makes sense. And if that miscellaneous buffer goes to marketing, that's also fine. This like can be really used wherever for whatever it's needed. Um, and looking at the market there, of course, like it makes sense, right? I'm like a $10 Canadian chocolate bars. Like we went to Whole Foods and the Trader Joe's, and I guess just across the border to just like kind of check out the chocolate there. I mean, that's so easy when we're here in BC. It's not very far, and to really see like how do you fit there, because it's one thing to calculate your prices. Now you need to see how it would look in the shelf and where it would sit in the shelf, in between what kind of ranges of chocolate and quality of chocolate to really know that. So I think, yeah, that's kind of knowing your prices inside out, of course, right? It's really, and already, I mean, like Ontario has a different price than here, right? Like I have so many different sheets, and if that's it's just simply the way of doing business is different costs in different provinces, and it's going to be a different cost in a different country, and just trying to account for it. And so there again, fair was a nice soft landing. I could test things out, like how does it even, affect me financially, and adjust it slightly. And now I think I have prices that I could go in wholesale with, to other like retailers.
Wow, you have thought about so much. I am so impressed. Thank you so much for sharing all of
Thank you.
this, Mara. It is inspiring. I want to go out, buy a bar of chocolate, and then start my exporting journey.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much, Archana.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Very briefly, these are the next few workshops that we have planned. Please log into the VBC website to stay tuned for all our incredible fireside chats and cafes and workshops and webinars. We've got some awesome things planned for the rest of the year. Thank you so much for joining in.
Yeah, there's no
Um,
launch feedback poll, Archana.
Yes, Jen. Thank you for that reminder. There is going to be a feedback poll which should have appeared right now. Please fill that in. It will give us an opportunity to plan more conversations like this that you want us to plan for you. And I can see such lovely messages in chat, Mara. I think everybody loved your story. And I think you've done your good deed for the day by inspiring so many.
Thank you. I remember in the beginning when you asked me, I was like, oh no, my company's not big enough. I don't think I've done enough export, but even the things that led me here are relevant, right? It's not always straightforward. It's like,
Yes.
it's not I make this plan and then it just works. So just like things came in between, things happened, and now I'm still like, at least I'm still on it. And I think that's what I told you a few days, like I didn't stop doing it, but there was like some bumps along the way, and it's probably going to happen for anyone else as well. So yeah, thank you for asking me. And I was a little bit hesitant at first, but but we are selling a little bit in other countries, so
Thank
that's
you for
great.
coming and sharing your story.
Yes, you're welcome. It was so good to speak to you.
Thank you, lovely ladies, for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.